Welcome to Channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about Australian migration, visa, or perhaps study abroad? Why don't you consider to subscribe to our channel, so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one getting all the insights. Okay, now today I received a request from one of the fans and wanted to know more about explanation of New South Wales state nomination for the skill migration part. So in this video, I will dig down into the detail of New South Wales, especially if you're in Sydney, Wollongong, Newcastle, or perhaps other suburbs or parts of regions of New South Wales. You should be interested about what is offering at the moment by the state of New South Wales. Now, bear in mind, due to the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the first half of 2021 will then still focus on critical sector where they are looking for post-pandemic skill migration and specifically focus on only onshore applicants. So if you're offshore, I would say and suggest that you should wait until about July 2021. Why is that? Because July is basically a start of a new financial year, and that's when they could implement new law, new regulation, and new policy. Now, before we start, I did receive a good news. Now, let me have a look if I can show you this. Here we go. Okay, now this is actually a news coming from South Australia, and this may be I will be sharing with you tomorrow on the 5th of February, where this newsletter I just received from South Australia saying that tomorrow, this is actually my email, saying that they will announce all the detail that will be available to apply from Monday 8th of February. So watch out for that upcoming video tomorrow and make sure you subscribe to my channel. Anyway, let's come back to what we're going to discuss today will be the New South Wales skill migration. So let's go first on the skill nominated visa subclass 190. So if you don't know about 190, it's a state nominated and it's a direct permanent residency visa. So as you can see here, it requires certain point tests and obviously eligible highly skilled workers, driven economic growth in New South Wales. That's all the jargons there. At this point in time, there's the minimum eligible requirement. I'll go through detail here and explains it. If you do have any questions, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. Now you need to be invited. Obviously, how the system works is that you put all your background in the so-called EOI expression of interest. Okay, so it says New South Wales does not invite EOI outside of normal function invitation round. This includes because of visa expiring, losing. So what they're saying is whatever your situation is, they won't take into considerations. They will only looking into the highest point receive and invite you in the particular occupation that they are offering at the moment, and you need to be at age of less than age of 45, at least minimum points of 65. Now at this point in time, I think the 190, if you don't have any point above 80, it's really unlikely that you'll be invited. Then your English, this is all, bear in mind this is all minimum. Okay, so minimum English is competent English, that's equivalent to IELTS 6, and obviously we will check out the occupation that's offering at the moment from now on until July, or obviously if there is any changes coming, for example in April or May, I'll keep you updated. Now, because it's state nomination, New South Wales government require you to have a residency in New South Wales. So you can see here this line reads, you must be currently residing in New South Wales. So again, what that meant is that you need to be onshore and living in New South Wales right now. If you're not unsure, of course, they won't consider at all. So that's the bad part about it. Now, let me just magnify that little bit. Okay, the commitment, obviously, they invite you. Of course, they want you to be there. So you need to commit to 2 years living in New South Wales. Now, people will question, uh, if in that 2 years I'm not in New South Wales, what will happen? Now, for permanent residency, obviously it's very hard to get rid of your permanent residency under the constitution and the law and regulations. But then the government always have right to actually come back and check whether you have abide the law. And they can always elect new laws to actually, treat the condition breaches. So just bear in mind, obviously, it's actually very hard to migrate in this point of time, whether or not you want to go anywhere else in 2021. So if you did have an opportunity to get it, just stay put and make sure you meet the conditions that you had agreed to. Okay, invitation round. During the invitation round, EOI are in ranked occupation code in order of point score. Again, that's what I'm trying to say. More points, you'll be more likely to be invited. So it has to be at least 80 points or above. Okay, English proficiency. So for example, if your English your score is 85 and the other guy is also 85, now they will then compare the two people that whether or not your proficiency of English is higher than the other, and then they will pick. And then the third priority will be the year of experience in the nominated occupation. So that goes into rank number one, the point score. Secondly is your English level, and thirdly is your work experiences. So again, the highest rank EOI will be number of places available given occupation, generally issued invitation apply. So that's how that will work. Now, New South Wales does not require what they do in Victoria. You have to put in another, and like Western Australia, you need to put in another application. So you do not need to contact New South Wales. So they will check the EOI, and then they will send you email if they do wish to invite you. So ready for your invitation email. And once you get the email, then you put through all the application, pay for the state nomination costs and price, and then obviously you reflect back whatever is required and attached to the email that what they want to do. So let's look at the current occupation for 190. Now it's very narrow. It does not open to a lot because due to the obviously COVID. So there's engineering manager, medical admin, nurse clinical director, welfare center manager, aeronautical engineer, biomedical engineer, novel architect, engineering professionals, nursing practitioners, and all the nurses categorized here. ICT business analysis, system analysis programmer, development programmer, software engineer, ICT security specialist, computer network system engineer, electrical engineer, draftsperson, and the electrical engineer technicians. Okay, so it's very limited at the moment due to obviously the pandemic. So what we can see here is they focus on nurses, doctors, engineers, and IT personnel. Any other occupation than this would not be considered, and that's what I foresee for the next couple of months until July 2021. So that's for 190. Now let's jump into 491. So for people who are not familiar with 491 basically provides you a higher state nomination points. If your points is below 80 and you still seek to migrate, no problem. What Australian government offer is a subclass 491 by means Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne are banned to use this 491. So the major suburban cities will not allow 491. So they want you to go to regional Australia. Okay, so you have to be there already and you need to live there. They'll give you 5 years of visa. And within the 5 years of this 491 visa, they do provide some benefits of what traditional permanent resident will have, and others visa holders will not have. For example, I think they will provide Medicare and things like that, as long as you live in the regional. Now, within the 5 years, if you achieve 3 years of living in regional and have the certain annual salary income, I would say that's going to be 53,900. And then 3 years afterward, you can then transfer into subclass 191, which is going to be a permanent residency. So that's another benefit there. Now, the criteria is what we see here is still utilize the EOI system, so they count the points. So if your points is less than 80, I would suggest you go for 491. Okay, and you have to be living in regional New South Wales, recent complete study in New South Wales, and living, working outside New South Wales. So they got 3 streams. Okay, 3 streams. So first one is whole valid living, working there. So obviously you need to get a skill assessment. So all the skill migrant need to get a skill assessment, and you need to show that you've been living in regional New South Wales for at least 12 months and been working in that whatever the nominated occupation that you're in. And the second category is recent complete study. So you might be a international student. So again, you got skill assessments, and you have completed study 12 months, 24 months prior to you being invited, being in designated regional area, and you have studied 2 years. So that's Australian study requirement. Qualification obviously is at the closely related nomination occupation there, and you are committed to continue to live in designated region New South Wales. And the third category is living, working outside, so offshore. But I won't consider this at the moment until perhaps July. Again, I have reiterated. Obviously, you need to get a job offer, and then at least 5 years of work experience, and that has to be skill assessed. Or you have a family tie in regional New South Wales, but this family tie do have now it has to be grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, brother, sister. So there's no cousins. Now, if you access 491 with a family sponsor category or stream through federal, then you can access first cousins and nephews and things. But New South Wales, they will only do grandma, grandpa, father, mother, brother, and sisters. Okay, so that's the differences. Now, let's jump into the actual form. This is very tiny. I'm gonna magnify that. Okay, now as you can see, I'm not too sure. I think you can read it. You might want to magnify a little bit. I'll read out. Now, this form is actually they categorize New South Wales regional centers into the centers on above. So you get Central Coast, Central West, Far South Coast, Far West, Hunter, Illawarra, Mid North Coast, Northern Inland, Northern Rivers, Rana, Riverina, South Inland, and Sydney. So you need to check whether your occupations actually been listed and have that dotted there in that region in order to be picked for 491 visa to be sponsored by New South Wales. So again, it looks like all the engineering, it has more engineer actually, more categories of engineer than subclass 190. And then obviously all the nurses, and there's no specific doctors here, but predominantly nurses here. And then the ICT professionals, so software developers and people like that. There's no accountants, there's no HR manager, there's no other categories of occupation, unfortunately. But then you can match that. So from what I can see, it's actually very hard. Obviously not for offshore applicants, because they are not accepting offshore at the moment. Onshore, you have to be either a recent graduate. Now, I can only see recent graduate more meaning all these requirements will be more towards engineers who are in regional New South Wales, but you need to check which um, areas that you're in, and you make sure you need to prove that you have been living there. So if we come back to the second part of the recent studies, you need to get skill assessments, completed your studies there, and located in regional area in New South Wales, and then you committed to live. You have lived in Destiny regional area. So again, that basically meant that during your studies, you're already in regional New South Wales. So that doesn't include Sydney, and that doesn't include where else? Newcastle is not in there. So that's another problem there, because major university teaching all these professions courses are predominantly not in regional. The only regional I can see will be the Southern Cross University, which is at the border of Queensland, Gold Coast, and New South Wales. So if you did so which one is that one? Let me check on that one. Should be, that's not Central, not Far West, not Hunter. Should be Northern Inland, I believe. That's or mid north. It should be Northern Inland. Not inland, Northern River. Let's just perhaps we can click in and then go in there. So North North Rivers. There's only nurses. You can see here. There's only nurses that they were allowed, and that's another issue there. It's not all the occupations being listed. The only one being fully listed will be Hunter, and all the other southern inland, so more towards inland of New South Wales, not the coast side. But the problem is how it's not possible to actually find university or courses to actually conduct study there. So the only other way that we come back here will be you might already been living there and working there. Now that's even harder for the 2020. It will be really rare, because obviously everybody knows that last year there's hardly people been working, and most of people working at home base. So anyhow, that's for our video today in regards to detail of New South Wales skill migration. Should you have more questions, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. And I'll see you for next video tomorrow. Goodbye.